I tried to bribe my professor and failed until I found a way that worked a little too well. I never planned on bribing anyone. Seriously. I was a regular business major in my third year at a mid-tier university in Pennsylvania. Not Ivy League, not a party school either, somewhere in between. The kind of place where professors still knew your name but didn't care if you spiraled. Fall semester was killing me. 4 classes, a part-time job at the campus bookstore, and the slow death of a relationship I should have ended months earlier. I was behind on readings, behind on ratings, behind on rent, behind on life. And then came the advanced corporate ethics midterm. Ironically, Professor Daniels, mid-50s, bow-tie guy, or the kind who always smiled when you failed. Ran class like a courtroom Socratic method, cold calls, pop quizzes. Everyone dreaded him. He had tenure, a reputation, and no tolerance for excuses. I scored a 42 out of 100. I expected better from you, he said, sliding the paper across my desk. That's when the thought first hit me. Not a full plan, just a spark. A what if. What if I could buy myself a way out? It sounded stupid, sleazy. But the panic was louder than my morals. If I failed this class, I'd lose my scholarship. If I lost my scholarship, I couldn't stay in school. If I couldn't stay in school, well, I didn't want to think past that. So I did what every dumb, desperate student does. I Googled how to bribe a professor without getting caught. Stupid, I know. But I wasn't exactly in peak decision-making mode. That night, I typed up a polite, neutral-sounding email. I didn't offer money directly, just something vague about discussing alternative options for improving my grade and how I'd be willing to offer a gesture of appreciation for his time. I read it over 5 times before clicking send. No reply. 2 days passed. On the 3rd day, I got an email from the university's academic conduct office. Someone had reported an attempt to inappropriately influence academic evaluation. My heart stopped. I thought I was screwed. Expelled, maybe. Turns out, I wasn't the first idiot to send a sketchy email like that. They gave me a warning, told me never to contact faculty about grades in a non-academic way again. Somehow, I walked out with just a slap on the wrist. Daniels never said a word about it in class, just kept giving me pop quizzes and side-eye. At that point, I should have given up, but I didn't. Because something worse happened. My boss at the bookstore cut my hours. Said holiday shifts were going to the seniors. That meant even less money and more stress. I had no backup. My parents were barely scraping by. I was the first one in my family, even in college. I needed a win, so I stopped thinking like a student and started thinking like a problem solver. Not, how do I bribe a professor, but how do people in power get persuaded without it looking like a bribe? And that's when the real plan started to form. After the email fiasco, I knew I couldn't be direct again. If I was going to try anything, it had to be subtle, professional, legit looking. That's when I remembered something Daniel said during our first week of class. He was obsessed with ethics in real-life corporate scandals. He always talked about how conflicts of interest don't start with money under the table. They start with relationships, with favors, with blurry lines. That was my angle. If I couldn't bribe him, maybe I could influence him. I started showing up early to class, sitting in the front row, asking just the right amount of questions to seem engaged without looking like a suck-up. After a few weeks, Daniels began greeting me by name again. His tone softened. I even caught him smiling once. Then I took it further. I looked him up online. Turns out he had a side gig consulting for a local business ethics think tank, small, boring, academic. But it had a newsletter and a student internship program. I applied. I wasn't even qualified, but I used his name in my application, mentioned how much I admired his class, and how it inspired me to pursue ethical leadership opportunities. I got the internship. Daniels looked surprised when he saw me at the first Zoom meeting. But he didn't say anything. I played it cool. I worked hard. I asked thoughtful questions during the sessions. I submitted reports early. By Thanksgiving, he started treating me like one of the promising ones. We now had casual Zoom check-ins about the internship, which conveniently overlapped with our class. I never brought up my grade. Not once. But I made sure he saw me as someone worth investing in. That's when I made my move indirect, subtle, and clean. I asked if he'd be open to reviewing a research proposal I was developing for an ethics competition hosted by a partner organization of the think tank. It was real, just obscure. He agreed. When he saw the draft, I made sure to embed a full section on ethical dilemmas faced by students under financial stress. I wrote about how unethical decisions often arise not from greed but desperation, how institutions could design safer, more transparent systems to support struggling students before they felt compelled to cheat or deceive. It wasn't personal, but it was personal. Daniels read it twice, gave me detailed feedback. He even added a comment in the margins. "This is a difficult subject, but you handle it with maturity." Well done. 2 days later, I got an email from the registrar. My midterm grade had been re-evaluated based on additional submitted work and demonstrated academic growth. My 42 was now a 68, still bad but passing. No one else in class got an adjustment. Daniels never mentioned it. He just started calling on me more in class, gave me nods when I answered right, even asked if I'd be interested in a paid assistantship next semester. I had found a way in, not with money, not with lies, just with something far more powerful. A story he couldn't ignore. But the story didn't end there. Because what I didn't realize was how much power I'd now placed in his hands and how quickly that would twist into something else. Something I didn't see coming. At first, everything felt like a win. Daniels had quietly raised my grade, invited me into professional circles, and even hinted at a future research role. I felt like I'd pulled off the impossible: no envelope of cash, no recorded conversation, just a strategic alignment of ego, guilt, and opportunity. But power plays always come with strings. I just didn't expect them to start tugging so soon. A few weeks before finals, Daniel sent me a late-night email. It was casual, too casual. "Hey, would love your help reviewing some proposals from incoming students. It's confidential, but I could use a second pair of eyes. Up for it?" I hesitated. Technically, reviewing applications as a student wasn't against policy, but it was definitely in a gray area. I knew what Daniels was doing, testing boundaries, seeing how far I'd lean in now that I owed him. I said yes. The next day, he shared a folder with 12 files: student essays, recommendation letters, academic records. These were real people applying for a summer grant program, and I was being asked to judge them. I did it anyway. I told myself it was harmless, that I'd only be offering input. But when I opened the spreadsheet he'd attached, I saw something that made my stomach tighten. A column labeled "Scoring." Preliminary by MH. He'd already entered scores. All he wanted me to do was confirm them. Rubber stamp the decision. It felt wrong. But I'd come this far. I copied the scores exactly. That was the first real trade. Not just my time, or my fake interest, but my conscience. I helped him rig a selection process, and he knew it. The second trade came during finals week. We were in his office. He was going over my final project, nodding, sipping his coffee like we were equals. "Your analysis of the Enron case is solid," he said. "But the paper's missing some documentation. You didn't cite 2 of the internal memos directly." I froze. I hadn't even seen those memos. "I only mentioned what was in the class reader," I said. He gave me a look, the kind you'd give someone pretending not to understand something very simple. "There's a version of the case study with supplemental memos. I shared it in one of the internship calls. Don't worry, I can assume you had access, given your position." That was it. He wasn't asking me to lie. He was setting it up so he could justify giving me a higher grade without technically bending the rules. And by not correcting him, I'd be complicit. I nodded. "Right. I must have overlooked them," I said. He smiled. "No problem. I'll note it as a small oversight, nothing major." The next morning, my final grade posted. Just high enough to boost my GPA back into safe territory. Just low enough not to trigger questions. I should felt relief. But instead, I felt watched. Controlled. Like every win came at a price I didn't know I'd agreed to pay. And it only got worse when I tried to pull away. After finals, I stopped responding to Daniel's late-night emails. Ignored a few calls. Declined his offer to join a new ethics competition team. That's when the coldness started. He removed me from the internship group chat, took me off the research assistant list, and worst of all, sent a cryptic message to the department chair about concerns with student conduct during external collaboration. He never named me, but I knew it was about me. I was being warned, subtly, professionally, legally. I'd played his game. Now he wanted to remind me who set the rules. I thought about going to the dean. Seriously thought about it. But what would I say? That I implied I'd give a professor a bribe, and he responded with unofficial favors and veiled threats? That I'd participated in grading fraud and was now upset because the professor who helped me was pulling back? It wasn't exactly a strong case. Worse, Daniels had receipts. Technically, I'd asked to help review those applications. I'd sent the email myself, responding to his invite with, "Would love to help." Sounds like a great opportunity. And I had confirmed those grades, word for word. Even thanked him for letting me be involved. If anyone looked into it, I'd seem like an overeager student who overstepped, not a victim. Daniels would walk away untouched. So instead, I tried to stay invisible. I refocused on my coursework, avoided him on campus, declined everything mixers, research events, even a departmental trip to DC that I'd once dreamed of joining. I thought distance would keep me safe. But then came the email from the Office of Academic Integrity. We'd like to meet to discuss a concern raised about your involvement in a peer selection process for the summer grant program. You are not in trouble, but your insight would be valuable. I felt sick reading it. The meeting was scheduled for the following Monday. Daniels hadn't just pulled back. He'd preemptively covered his tracks, framed me as the one who'd crossed a line. He wanted to make sure that if anything came out, I would be the one to take the fall. I panicked. The weekend was a blur of anxiety. I barely ate, barely slept. On Sunday night, I wrote everything down. Every interaction with Daniels, the original conversation about my grade, the internship invite, the application reviews, the paper feedback. I didn't exaggerate, didn't add anything that wasn't true. Just the facts. And then I printed 2 copies. When I walked into the academic integrity office, I expected suits, lawyers, maybe a formal hearing. Instead, it was just a woman in her 40s, wearing a cardigan and glasses, sitting behind a small desk. "You're not in trouble," she said immediately. "This is confidential. We just need to understand your involvement." I handed her the paper. "Before I say anything," I said, "I need you to read this." She did, quietly. Her expression didn't change until halfway through, at which point she took off her glasses and leaned in slightly, reading the rest more slowly. When she finished, she looked up. "Has anyone else seen this?" "No," I said, "only you." She folded the paper and slid it into a folder. "Thank you for being honest," she said. "We may need to follow up." I left feeling like I'd either saved myself or signed my academic death warrant. The fallout came slowly. A few weeks later, Daniels was placed on administrative leave. The department made no announcement, but word spread fast. Students whispered. Rumors flew. No one knew exactly why he was gone, and I didn't correct them. Then I got another email, not from academic integrity, from the associate dean. He invited me to a private meeting. I expected accusations. Instead, I got understanding. "You're not the first student Daniels manipulated," he said. "We've received other complaints. What you submitted helped us open an investigation." My shoulders dropped. It wasn't just me. They didn't expel me. Didn't even put a mark on my record. But I had to formally withdraw from the internship and complete a remediation module on academic ethics. My transcript would stay clean, but I'd never be allowed to work under Daniels again. And I was okay with that. I'd walked the edge of something rotten and barely made it back. Still, something stuck with me. A line the associate dean said at the end of our meeting. "Sometimes the systems we trust most are the ones that look cleanest on the surface." That felt true, because Daniels looked like the perfect academic, and I looked like the desperate kid trying to cheat. But the truth? We were both playing a game. Only difference was I didn't know how high the stakes were until I was already in too deep. 2 years later, it's been almost 2 years since that whole mess. I graduated. Barely. My GPA didn't bounce back to a 4, and I lost out on a couple of opportunities because of how things shook out, especially that internship Daniels promised. But I got into a decent grad program in another state, far away from the old department, far away from Daniels. He never returned to campus. Officially, he resigned for personal reasons. But anyone who was there during that year knows better. I later heard through an older TA who still had friends in the department that Daniels quietly settled some kind of investigation. No lawsuits, no admissions, just gone. Some part of me still wonders what would have happened if I hadn't walked into that office and handed them my story. If I just denied everything, or stayed quiet, or worse, tried to keep benefiting from it. But I think I know. I'd still be walking on eggshells, still waiting for that email, or phone call, or audit, waiting to be caught, to be exposed. And maybe worse, I'd always know that I let someone like him win. What Daniels did wasn't a one-time mistake. He built a whole system around favor trading, coercion, and ego. He counted on students being too scared to speak up, and for a while I was, but not forever. Now, when I talk to undergrads, the ones who ask about professors, internships, networking, I'm careful with what I say. I tell them not to shortcut the system, because sometimes shortcuts lead you straight into traps. And I tell them this: if someone offers you something too good to be true, it probably is. You just might not see the price until it's too late. If you like this video, please subscribe for more.